Hi everyone, this is Nivedan here again from Coffee and Startups, and I am super excited to have a very good friend and a very special guest for the day, Arjun Vaidya. He's a co-founder of India's largest Ayurveda brand online. They called the Dr. Vaidyas. They started in 2016, and only within 4.5 years, they got acquired by RP Sanjiv Goenka Group, making them one of the India's first D2C exits. He now leads venture investing for Verlinvest India, and he's also an active angel investor and mentor to brands in India's startup ecosystems. He's virtually the face of the D2C industry right now. If you look him up, you'll know what I'm talking about. I love that. Whenever, I keep hearing updates about you, Arjun, and it's always amazing to see one or the other very amazing thing happening. You were featured in Forbes 30 under 30 Asia list and Business World 40 under 40 list, among multiple other prestigious awards, which I don't want to, kind of make you awkward by listing all of them here. What I also love is that you run your own podcast yourself. It's called Direct to a Billion Consumers, and you talk about navigating India's complex and exciting FMCG and D2C ecosystem. So this is like a brief intro that I got put together for you. And there is, just for the people who are watching this, for some context, I know Arjun from the time I was working at my last company, Misho, where I was tinkering with a new category called health and supplements and wellness, right? Where this is where we got to engage first. I was the category manager, and Arjun, you were back then. And I told you yesterday when we connected, right? And my phone, it still said Arjun Vaidya supplier. It was so funny, and I saw, because I enjoyed talking to you back then as well, because I was used to talking to very small scale in suppliers who were very new to the online ecosystem, and you were already comfortable with some of the metrics and all. So I was like, okay, there are progressive people in this industry who are from a very different background, trying out very different things. So I was always very keen on figuring out how can I make it work for you and a couple of other brands like you. I was very excited to serve specially. So that's how we know each other, and then we've been in touch once in a while, I think. So thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate that you've been in this podcast. Just to mention to other people, I just enjoyed watching, especially amongst all the things you've done recently. I can see on video at the very least. You've been also in Raj Shamani's podcast, right? And that is honestly the favorite. I personally love that a lot, for people who want to get a deep look into your life, into how you think. I think that is a wonderful conversation that you had, and I would love it if we can have something as exciting here today. So thanks.
Yes, absolutely. And Nivedan, I'll tell you one thing, so I remember very clearly where I was sitting when we had our first call as well. I was sitting outside. We used to have a small clinic in our office, and I was sitting in the waiting area of that clinic. And I think, like, from that first conversation, and we'll talk about this more as we go along through the podcast. But I think as founder, right, you're constantly trying to sell, right, and tell your story and all of that.
Yeah.
But as an early or even a mid-stage founder, very few people are willing to listen. And I remember in that conversation, you actually listened to the entire journey and the story of the brand. Wow. So yeah, I remember that conversation vividly.
Wow, I'm surprised actually, because I honestly was interested. I found you guys were doing something very unique, and I'm inherently a curious guy. So tell me all the stories you can. I'm always up for it. So thank you so much. If you remember that much from that time. So amazing. So let's let's do this. Let's dive right in. I think I have given more like a little bit of a LinkedIn snapshot to people, but I want to know more about your journey, about your story. So let's start with I want to get a brief sense of your background and how did you arrive till the point of starting up Dr. Vaidya in 2016, right?
Yeah. So look, Nivedan, I'm Bombay born and raised. Vaidya, my last name means Ayurvedic doctor. I come from a legacy of 150 years of Ayurveda in my family. So my grandfather, great-grandfather, and generations before, all Ayurvedic doctors.
Wow.
The legacy of our business was not a business, actually. My great-grandfather moved from Gujarat to Bombay, set up an Ayurvedic clinic here. And my grandfather, as was customary at the time, graduated from college, went to medical school, graduated from medical school, and then eventually joined his father, took on his father's practice. By the 80s and 90s, my Dada became one of India's most successful Ayurvedic doctors. He used to see 300 to 350 patients a day in his clinic. He had 12,000 patients on a monthly basis, writing them via post. Post, as you can imagine, was the e-commerce of that time. And he was a man who didn't care for sales, distribution, marketing, or strategy. He was a man of service. He was a doctor, right? So consultation at my Dada's clinic was always free. You came, saw my grandfather for free, and if you bought medicine, you paid for the medicine. Right? That was the way it was. My dad graduated from college in the late 80s, and he wanted to. At late 80s, for all of you who saw those times, I didn't, but that was when FMCG was being built in India. Right? The first brands were coming up. TV advertising had just started. And so my dad said, look, there's a huge opportunity to take these proprietary formulations that we have, that's going to thousands of people in the clinic, to millions of people across the country through FMCG. So we tried to work together for a year. My dad did a TV ad for our product HerboFit. And my Dada lost money for the first time in his life. And that was it. Then my Dada said, this is not for me. If you want to work with me, work in the clinic or forget about it. And so my dad went his own way and started a luxury jewelry and watch business 35 years ago called the Rose Group, and does exceptionally well. So that's my family business. But look, Nivedan, for me, I grew up with asthma. I grew up with juvenile bronchitis. I grew up with pumps, nebulizers, inhalers, steroids. I went to the cricket field at age 5, and like most kids. And by age 7, my grandfather moved me off the cricket field. Because for all of you who've come to Bombay, we don't have much grass on our cricket fields. It's only mud and dust. And dust wasn't good for an asthmatic kid. So I was playing golf and squash at age 7. And you can imagine a 7-year-old kid trying to hit a golf ball. 95% of the shots didn't even go, right? So it sucked for me that like all my friends were playing cricket and football and I was playing golf and squash, individual sports alone, like painful, right? And so 14 years of Ayurvedic treatment later, I was cured of asthma. I started playing cricket again and I became captain of my school cricket team. And it wasn't a good cricket team. Our coach was a history teacher in the school. Not so many people were interested to play in that team. We played a sum total of 5 matches. And I was not the captain because I was the best player on the team. I was the captain because I showed up to every practice. And that's sort of a big philosophy of mine. I'm not a smart worker because I'm not smart enough, but I'm the hardest worker you'll find. I'll put in more hours than everyone else. And so I eventually became the captain of my school team. And that was a big moment in my life. While it was not a big cricket team or a big thing for most people, for me it was a huge thing, right? I love cricket. If you ever follow my content on LinkedIn, you'll see me write about cricket a lot as well. So then I said, like, asthma cured with Ayurveda. This thing, Ayurveda is my family legacy, but it's also a deep impact in my life. So I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. 2009, I went to college in the US, and I went to study biotechnology to repackage what my grandfather had with Ayurveda. I ended up studying economics.
So you kind of had some sort of a vision already that I want to do biomedical.
So Nivedan, my college admissions essay for the US was about my family legacy of Ayurveda. So I had it at the back of my mind. I didn't study biotechnology, by the way. I studied economics and politics. My grandfather promised he'll pay for my education if I study biotechnology. So he paid for 1 year, then he stopped paying because he said, you're not studying biotechnology, so let your dad pay. I'm not paying for this. So when I was in the US, actually, I saw the yoga revolution live, right? Yoga mats, yoga gyms, yoga apparel, Lululemon, multi-billion-dollar industry in the US. And I started thinking to myself, look, it's amazing that it's so big, but it sucks that India has not taken it to the world, right? Like, we should have been the people taking Ayurveda, yoga to the world. So I called my Dada from campus, I remember, and said, I will take Ayurveda to the world, right? That we can't let Indian things like Ayurveda and yoga be taken by foreigners to the world. It's great that yoga is big, but we should be a part of that journey. And look, I'm super patriotic. I wear this band with the Indian flag on my hand. I've been wearing it for the last 15 years. And if you ever buy Dr. Vaidya's products, you'll see proudly Indian written on the front and center of the packaging.
Of course, I remember.
So I think came back to India 2013. Worked in private equity for 3 years in a consumer sector focused fund called L Capital, now called L Keratin. And I saw some big changes happen in India, Nivedan. I saw Indians move towards Indian brands instead of buying imported products. I saw Ayurveda come to the fore after 2014 government change, Ministry of Ayush was created, and customers like you became excited about Ayurveda. And I saw e-commerce was here to stay. Like I in 2014, was the youngest member of my team. They said, work on this thing called e-commerce, see if it becomes something in India, right? And so in 2014, I got to spend time with Myntra, Jabong, Pepperfry, Vame, Bluestone, and as an sort of prospective investor, but we didn't make any of those investments. I said, this is not a fad.
Wait, you missed the opportunity to invest in people like them, Myntra and all?
Yeah, we missed that.
You were there.
I was there. But look, I think eventually, while we missed that opportunity to invest, I think what we did see was, what I did see had a deep impact in my life. I saw, look, this e-commerce thing, it's not just a fad, right? Like at that time, think about today, it's like part of our life.
It's not obvious,
2013, 14, Amazon just coming to India, right? That's the time that I'm talking about. So really got to see that firsthand. And then eventually my grandfather passed. I made him a promise at some point I'll do something with legacy. I quit my job and I took on this legacy and built Dr. Vaidya's, and I guess the rest is history, right?
Amazing. I want to know what was your exit like? First, let's start with what was the exit amount? That must be public now.
Yeah. So look, I think forget the amount, right? I think what is an exit, right? Because we haven't seen as many in India.
Of course, I want to know that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So look, I think eventually we partnered with RP Sanjiv Goenka Group. They invested in our first sort of institutional round. We didn't have any angels and stuff. 2016, 17 was a different world, right? People were not investing in the ecosystem, and our Series A round.
And honestly, a D2C brand, when that wasn't a popular term back then. And
by the way,
to not invest in software company was already a big deal. I mean, it's so dangerous to imagine putting out FMCG products out in the world.
$5 million was our Series A. Today, people are like, $5 million, small round. That time, it was $5 million. You raised $5 million.
Yeah.
So look, I think we chose this partner, right? And eventually, the idea was they always wanted to acquire the business. But I think for us, we did really well in COVID, right? We were already market leaders, and then just demand spiked. We grew well. We launched relevant products and really built the business. Our business came out very strong through 2020. And then eventually they made an offer to sort of acquire the business. And we thought it was fair value. And so we accepted that offer. But I think let's leave aside the process. Let's talk about the emotional side of an exit, right? Because that's
absolutely. I want to know. So I want to get to the exit. I mean, in a certain sequence. I want to know that story definitely. You've already answered why you started. First of all, let's start with that. This was. For you, it was partly family or traditional heritage in that sense, right? There's a legacy that you had that you wanted to carry forward for your great grandfather and grandfather, right? And then you were well positioned at a certain time where Indian e-commerce was picking up. You've seen how people in this industry think, right? So being on the other side of the table at that point as an investor, when you actually not had any prior experience, doing a lot of things hands-on, let's say brand building, operations and blah, 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 all of that. I want to know, how did you get the confidence that, you know what, I'll start the brand now, why not later? This is a big deal for most people. It's a big mental hurdle to overcome.
Yeah, look, I was really young, so I didn't think how difficult it would be. So I just said, "Chalo karte hai, let's see what happens," right? And I think had I been the age I am now, I would have found it difficult to just say, "Let me quit my job, let me just do it," right? At that time I had very little responsibility, and so I said, let's do it. And naivety maybe on how difficult it would be. I didn't think it would be so difficult, Nivedan. Honestly, it was really hard the first 2.5 years, because look, I think today everyone's like, oh, Dr. Vaidya is amazing, great story, amazing brand. Thesis made total sense. No brand was modern.
No, I can't. Yeah, I at least because I've been watching the startup ecosystem space since I was in college back then, 2013. When it was sprouting. And honestly, imagine hypothetically, if I was the investor and you came in and said, you know what, let me repackage some of the Ayurvedic supplements and, all of this and sell them under a brand and charge a premium for it, I would say, I don't know, Arjun, if that's a great idea. And if anyone says that it was obvious, is delusional.
So now people say it was obvious. Nobody said it was obvious. Everyone was like, this is a terrible idea. By the way, Ayurvedic brands are made by really experienced people. It's not the right idea for a 24-year-old kid to be starting an Ayurveda brand. I'll tell you a funny story, Nivedan. I used to not, so I can't grow a beard still, right? I only shave once.
And I can't grow hair, so don't even complain in front of me.
so I only shave once a week, and this is the max, right? I shaved last week. So I used to not shave at all when I started Dr. Vaidya's, because at least some facial hair would make me look a little bit older.
People would take you more seriously.
Yeah. And lots of that, I think I'm really happy that we got kicked and slapped a lot in the first 2 years of Dr. Vaidya's. Failed a lot. And so we really knew the value of success. And I think that was sort of important for us, right? When it came eventually. I think the biggest learning for me was the offline failure. We went offline initially. Failed miserably. Dr. Vaidya's was not a D2C brand. It was an offline brand for 6-8 months and failed miserably. That's what moved us into online.
Did you pair it up with a clinic concept as well?
So clinic existed all through and still exists. But we also gave a free consultation online. Like my dada did in the clinic. We kept that one clinic running, but we gave a free consultation online. Today you'll go to any Ayurvedic brand, you'll see free consultation online. That's something I'm proud to say we started in this country.
Oh, amazing. Got it. So yes, I think that makes sense. And you, you've been through 4.5 years total journey, and you said the first 2.5 years was hard. Let's define hard. Why were you out of your wits doing that?
So Nivedan, what's the hardest thing for an entrepreneur, right? You work 14 hours a day and you get no results. Like that's
fall
hard.
Flat.
That's really, forget fall flat. I was I remember sitting in my office one day thinking, yaar, sale kahan se aayega? Where will sales come from? Please, God, give me an answer to get orders and to get customers, right? That's damn hard. Like when you're sitting there, you're saying, I don't know what to do, where to go, how to solve for this. I'm not even busy, right? Like nobody's calling me. Entrepreneurs always busy, so many calls, so many things. I was nothing. Nobody was calling me. Nobody was interested to talk to me. No one, nothing, right? That was really hard, right? I think not being able to see results after putting in lots of hard work.
Yeah.
That's tough. So you show up every day. You sit in that office for 14 hours a day. You come home and then you're like, actually I have nothing to show for the 14 hours I put in today. Like I'm still at one order a day on my website, right? So I think that's hard. And I think now as an investor as well, I think one thing I said, I put this on LinkedIn as well. Whether a company is doing 1 lakh a month, 5 lakhs a month, 50 lakhs a month, 5 crores a month or 50 crores a month, respect the entrepreneur because each of them is putting 14 hours a day.
Wow.
Right? Whether you do 50 crores a month or 1 lakh a month, you're putting 14 hours a month.
I think media blinds us with all the glory stories. Right. And I know that's why probably for this podcast, I've mentioned some of the accolades that you've received. Right. And it feels a little odd because, you kind of also internally respect all the grind that everyone else is also putting in. Right. So I like that you bring that point out. I think more people need to acknowledge that. But the good thing is I think it's picking up. That mindset is picking up.
Yeah. And one more thing I'll tell you, Nivedan, like on this media thing as well, right? So I think what we end up reading is only the end, right?
Of course.
And so lots of young people come for mentorship, pitch their startups, etc. They're like, even I want to be a unicorn. Mujhe bhi economic times mein article chahiye, right? And look, I think the amount of blood, sweat and tears that it took, it didn't come easily for anyone. Right? You speak to any successful founder, and that's why platforms like yours are really important because you're digging through what was the hardest thing for me? Sitting on my laptop, not getting any orders, right? Nobody talks about that. Like Economic Times is not going to come and say, here's the backstory behind Arjun Vaidya, right? So I think it's really important to understand. And I didn't know how much hard work it would take to build a company. I didn't know, right? And now I know. So I respect anyone who's putting in that work.
Wow. No, so I think, that's fair. That's very hard. What I want to know is, in this process, of course, the first half of the journey was especially harder, I guess, because that's when you don't see the results compared in proportion to the efforts you put in. Was there some sort of a switch, some sort of an inflection point beyond which you said, you know what, I've got a grip, results are showing up, or at least I'm confident results will show up? Or was it always like a slow, tedious learning curve?
No, it was not a tedious learning curve. It was very flat for a very long time and then just zoomed.
What
right?
was
And
that
so,
point and why that happened?
So November 2018, 1 year from when we launched our website. So we started the company October 2016. November 2017, we pivoted to online. And we launched our website, drvaidyas.com. And we did one order every 3 days at that time on our website. So 10 orders a month types. So 1 year we learned, right? We learned Facebook, Google, advertising, setting up a warehouse, talking to customers, WooCommerce, Shopify, conversion friendliness, checkouts, all of that. And then in November 2018, I remember we did 35,000 rupees on one day on our. So every night, 11:50 to 11:59, I would check din ka sale kitna hua aaj ka. And one day we hit 50 orders on our website, single branded Ayurvedic website. Today you'll say 50 orders, what's the big deal? Everyone does 50 orders. November 2018, single branded Ayurvedic website, huge deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's when, and then we started hitting this on a consistent basis. And that's when Trisha and I realized that this is not just a figment of our imagination. Now there is a business here. There is really something here.
Now how? I mean, this was an event that happened. Do you know why that switch happened though suddenly?
Yeah, so look, I think we learned, the one good thing we had was time. Today founders don't have time. So we had time. So we spoke to every single customer. From speaking to every single customer, we realized Dr. Vaidya's is actually not an urban elite brand like we thought it would be. It's not a millennial brand. It's a Bharat brand that's increasing the accessibility of Ayurveda across this country, right? Because in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Calcutta, you have access to Ayurvedic doctors, you have access to products. In Muzaffarnagar, Trichy, Imphal, and Anantnag, you don't have access to high quality Ayurvedic doctors and care at the touch of fingertips.
I'm surprised. Yeah.
So 82% of our customers at Dr. Vaidya are outside the top 10 cities. And when we understood that insight, we changed the brand, not changed the brand, but changed the way we communicated the brand. It was always Hindi, English first, lots of vernacular communication, wider range of products. And then we started scaling, right? And that's when we eventually...
I think, that was the inflection point I was looking for, understanding into who your customer really was.
Yeah, and then
a big deal.
50 orders a day at a customer acquisition cost where we actually made money on every order. That's when we said, look, this is now a real business and we can hyperscale. So it was 2 years from 0 to 50 orders a day and then 2 years from 50 to 5,000 orders a day.
Fair enough. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's also the story with a lot of other companies, other founders, where the inflection point is typically around product market fit, right? And where either you realize that, this is where you need to focus or this is what you need to switch completely. So in your case, it was knowing very well, this is our customer, not this. Let's switch everything accordingly. And you said vernacular and maybe even I think your packaging and some of the stuff you might have revised as per that. Communication changed significantly. I think that's a big learning to kind of have a great feedback loop in place of who your customer really is, not who you think he or she is.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Now I want to get to the exit story. It's exits are still not commonplace. I mean, it's still a kind of a semi-dream for most founders, even those who've had, relatively high success in terms of valuation and whatnot. How did this exit happen and why for a brand like yours? What was the thinking behind that for RP Sanjiv Goenka Group as well? I want to know that story.
No, I think they had a view on Ayurveda and they wanted to have an Ayurveda brand as part of their portfolio. I think they identified us as the right one for them. And then eventually they always wanted to acquire the business, right? So that was the understanding when they initially invested in the business as well. But I think COVID really helped us scale, right? We really, really came out strong in COVID because we were open all through. We were shut only for 10 days. The rest of the time, Dr. Vaidya's was open.
You were technically essential goods.
We were essential goods, not technically. We were, right? Because Ayurvedic medicine, not technically,
fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think launching products that were relevant in the immunity and hygiene space at that time, plus actually staying open and engaging with customers more than just selling our products. I think that really propelled us into a different place. So Dr. Vaidya's through COVID started becoming a household name. I wouldn't say it's still a household name, but it started becoming a household name.
Wow. And what was the viewpoint that the group had? Why an Ayurveda brand and why you guys?
I think Ayurveda brand. I mean, there is so much scale left to be built in Ayurveda, right? And there are a lot of large companies in Ayurveda. A few large companies in Ayurveda that have been around for a really long time. But there weren't really many insurgent brands in Ayurveda. And Ayurveda needed it, like all spaces, right? Ayurveda needed an insurgent brand. And so I think our sort of new age look to it plus the legacy, for them seemed to be like a good package. Obviously, they'll have more answers than I will, but I think that's my view of their thesis on our business. And I think it actually is it's a very interesting combination, right? Because it was a new brand with a young founding team that had the benefit of 150 years of legacy. Not so common, right?
And you used it to your best advantage as well. I mean, you had 150 years of legacy to show for, and why not honestly leverage every strength you have in your business? That's the fairest thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if tomorrow I show up and say, buy my Ayurveda products, I don't think, especially as a bald guy, like, you grow your hair first.
No, there was a lot of credibility. Lots of credibility.
Yeah, I see. I know, I understand. So cool. So I think we've covered a part of your story, and there are a couple of questions I had around the D2C direct to consumer market and FMs, and it's kind of relative positioning with the FMCG markets as we understand it. So I had a few questions around that. And it's a direct to consumer brand. It's typically an online first way of distributing your products, right? But I want to know from you, what does really D2C mean, and how is it different from all the products I've been used to and the typical kirana or grocery shop model?
So I'm going to borrow a line from a friend actually. The definition of D2C is not just in direct to consumer, online first, right?
Yeah.
D2C is actually a way of thinking, right?
Okay.
So it's about insurgent, it's about solving new problems for customers, and it's about agility. So what large FMCG, and obviously respect to them for doing what they do, cannot do because of its size, or the amount of things that surround what they do, D2C can do, right? So whether you look at Boat saying, hey, headphones are boring, let's make them fun. Or you look at Mama saying toxin-free personal care products. Or you look at M-Caffeine saying caffeinated cosmetics. You look at Dr. Vaidya saying new age Ayurveda. We came in and we said, look, this space has been around for a really long time. Customers consume this stuff, but it needs to be shaken up, right? And so we came and we shook up the spaces. And that thinking of quick product launches, deep consumer insights, connecting directly with customers, that is D2C for me. And so technically, a brand can have a 50%, 40% offline share of its revenue as well, but still be D2C.
Interesting. Hearing that makes it almost, when I process it, what it seems to me is for the bigger traditional mammoth FMCGs, their target is to serve everyone, while D2Cs are very, you can say, niche driven. Is that also a derivation of what you said?
Not at all. So Dr. Vaidya, as I said, was 82% outside top 10 cities, right? And so I think there are a lot of niche D2C brands. There are. But there are also folks like us who cater to the Bharat consumer. D2C is solving a problem in a new way or a new problem for the customers, right? It's usually D2C brands start their journey online first. And what's the real power of D2C, Nivedan? The real power of D2C, the secret sauce for D2C is names, numbers, email addresses, and products, right? If you think about offline, there is a manufacturer or brand owner, and there's a distributor, a retailer, and an end customer. So there are at least 2 to 3 layers between them. As a D2C brand, my secret sauce is the data. I know what Nivedan bought, when his product will run out, and then I should call him again and say, hey, by the way, also buy this next time. That's the secret sauce of D2C.
Wow. No, that makes a lot of difference. I think, yes, even for the biggest FMCG companies, they find it hard to track. They know how their cartons are moving, but they don't know where each product is landing up. And I think that's where they employ all these fancy surveying companies, Nielsen's of the world, and still land up with mediocre insights at best. Because that's something I've spent some time personally doing about the companies before. we working with HUL, and they were almost operating blind. And like, you're supposed to be HUL. Why are you dependent on like second grade data? I'm actually surprised. I was genuinely shaken. And we were trying to build a solution where they could have every single individual's insight as well, their purchasing behavior, everything. So that was very close to me. So I understand this gap a lot. But we said they solve a new problem for a slightly different, or of the same customer or different customer. Isn't that what the definition of niche would be then? That, because we've had Himalaya rather, that brand, right? Himalaya has been a fairly popular brand name. They have a wide range of Ayurveda products, also medicinal supplements, whatnot, and a couple of other brands if we start listing now. What were they missing out that brands like yours got a strong hold of? Why?
Yeah, I think, look, I would say I wouldn't use the word niche, because niche is then perceived as urban or elite.
Okay, no, with no context. Niche in the more dictionary term, right? It's a
absolutely.
It's a smaller segment, but it's a strong segment.
I agree. So look, I think, what did we do, right? Two things. One, firstly, we took it online. Nobody was taking it online. And so we were like, okay, there's a huge set of customers that want to consume this, and we'll take it online. And second, we re-envisioned how Ayurveda should be consumed. We're the first brand in the world to launch Chyawanprash in a toffee. Nobody's ever done that.
I remember you sent it to me at Misho in the package. I loved it.
But why is Chyawanprash black, bitter, sticky, and inconvenient? Because it is. When we said we want to put in a toffee, people were like, that's such a dumb idea. Nobody will consume it. I was like, no, but kids hate Chyawanprash. Parents love to give their kids Chyawanprash because it's so good for their health. Kids hate having it because it doesn't taste good. And today's kids, by the way, can take a decision to say no.
No, I think that, I still remember the taste of a Chyawanprash coffee. And I was like, you have to be really crazy to be doing all of this. And I loved it. I mean, in a very crazy, in a positive way, that someone's thinking beyond the traditional modes of doing things. And this toffee, I think, is a great symbol of that. So let's look at, we've spoken about the difference between FMCG and D2C. I want to know that over the last decade, especially, I think whatever change have we observed in the Indian subcontinent in general, right? Whether it be from macro perspective, whether it be from demographics and, economic demographics perspective, all of that, a lot has changed. And I think that is one of the reasons why we have so many new opportunities springing up, new markets being created every day, and it's going to go on for a while, right? I want to know from you, which consumer behaviors have you seen are very strong, and how are they going to influence the products and businesses of, the next decade?
Look, I'll say firstly, huge change since the pandemic. My parents never shopped online. They're parents of e-commerce entrepreneurs who never shopped online. My mom didn't have online banking set up. Now she asks the fruit vendor why they don't accept UPI. My dad has made like 50 orders on Amazon, goes on his Instagram feed, clicks on brands, buys D2C brands, and then calls them and says, hey, you're in Bombay, I'm in Bombay. How can it take 4 days to reach me? Like, I know that it takes only 1 day in intra-city delivery, right?
Yeah.
So that behavior has changed. But now, people have also gone back to shopping offline. And so what was 1 rupee in terms of sales pre-pandemic went to 10 rupees in the pandemic. Now it will settle somewhere between 3, 5 and 7. We don't know where it will settle. So offline will get back some of its share. And so lots of conversations now about omni-channel, phygital, multi-channel.
Yes.
That's one big change we've seen in consumption behavior. The second big thing we've seen actually is with the number of brands that have come out, and the amount of things brands have told customers become much more discerning. So the Indian customer now knows what BHA or serum or salicylic acid is, because they've seen so much personal care over the last 4 or 5 years that they actually know these things, right? And so I think as brand owners now, they have to accept that we can't fool the customer. With the availability of online, research and information is freely available to everyone.
Yeah.
So customers, second one is customers are more discerning. And 3, with online, it's very easy for a customer to tell you how good or bad you are, right? And so delivering a positive and high quality experience is non-negotiable. Absolutely non-negotiable.
I think we've become very sensitive to experience. I mean, and so much, just I keep telling my friends that, there's a reason I personally love shopping from Amazon a lot. right? And when people ask me why over Flipkart or any other place, I'm like, listen, straightforward. If there is a brand who has their own website, the only differential for me is how do they treat me if things go slightly off their chart? That's it, right? Because something I order 3 times, 5 times, there's once I'll have a slightly troublesome experience. How do you handle me back then is the most important defining factor of how I see you, right? Or your product has to be the only one in the world that I can buy and you can monopolize and don't care about it, which doesn't happen in today's world. So I think the single most important experience, the part of customer experience, is going to decide the long-term future of brands in general. It's so strong that people don't even compare prices anymore on other platforms. So it's very rightly said. I think that's going to be one of the most discerning factors. I would like to tell people who are watching this that this is only the first half. We're going to do another episode and we're going to pick his brains on, how does one really start a D2C brand? What does it involve? Really, more like hands-on experience, like view, a bird's eye, but still a hands-on view of how all of this goes. We're going to talk about that in the next podcast. But before that, I want to end up with one last question. And that is more on the side of a lot has changed for you personally. I think you've seen massive shift in your own journey, like from starting up in the last 6-7 years, then exiting, and then now you're again back on the investor track. You're leading one of the big venture funds here, right? And you're also very active in mentoring and educating a lot of the next crop of entrepreneurs, right? You partnered with Growth School, for instance, right? And you're there talking to a lot of people, and I think that's why I earlier mentioned this before. I love the fact that you're the de facto face of D2C in India. What I'm keen on knowing is, what does the next few years look like for you? Where are you going to be invested in?
So Nivedan, look, when we exited Dr. Vaidya's, my wife and I said that if we can enable 1,000 brands with our time, effort, energy, and maybe some capital, then then we have done something good, right? Because when we started, there was not so much help and there was no ecosystem. And so, can we be part of building this ecosystem? That's life for me. I'm not someone who looks into the future so much. So if you asked me 5 years ago, would I be having this conversation with you right now? I would have probably not known that answer, right? So I don't gaze into the future so much, but I say that if we can give back and enable 1,000 founders in D2C, because that's the space we know, or consumer or e-commerce enablement or e-commerce, then we've done something right.
Wow. That's your new mission.
Yeah. And by the way, we have 40 of them coming to my home today as part of our Growth School cohort.
Yes.
Thank you for doing this and sharing more stories of founders.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arjun, for coming up today. I think you sharing your journey, your insights, it means a lot. I want to be that person who helps bring out these amazing, stories from the inside to out in the world, and whoever it benefits, that will be a big win. So thank you again. I really appreciate you taking out the time.